So this is Rob Thompson. That's Carl Thomas over there. This is Game Plan You Today. And just so you know, we will have questions hopefully coming in if we catch people at the right time coming off of work right now. So we'll get them, we'll pop them up the screen, Carl, when we do have them. They can also text them over to me. And here it is on the bottom, 518-867-1117. Throw your first name in there, and we'll ask Carl any questions relating to business or life or whatever. So, Carl, you are a proven CEO, board of director member, senior advisor, international C-suite growth strategist, entrepreneur, a mentor, and the list goes on and on. And I thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Oh, my pleasure, Rob.
So for those that don't know you, and within my audience, why don't you give an intro to yourself, tell a little bit more about your career and what you've been up to now, and share a little bit of that knowledge and your story with us.
No, for sure. So I've been, and I'm not really as old as it may seem, but I've been very fortunate over my both athletic career and business career. I came out of UCLA as a swimmer and a water polo player, was fortunate enough to swim in a couple of Olympic trials and actually played on the U.S. national water polo team for a couple of years. All of that aquatic activity led to my first real job, other than being a bartender and a waiter, which I'm sure we all did at some point in time. But I became the vice president of marketing at Speedo Swimwear. I was at Speedo for the better part of 7 years. From Speedo, I launched a triathlon property called the U.S. Triathlon Series in the early 80s. We sort of began and then expanded upon what has commonly been called short course triathlon. But in 1984, around the occasion of the LA Olympic Games, we were in the third year of the series, and we settled on 1,500 meter swim, 40K bike, 10K run. And the next 10 years saw that format explode worldwide. I was a co-founder of what is now USA Triathlon, and also the co-founder of what is now the International Triathlon Union. And our distance, that 1,500 meter swim, 40K bike, 10K run, became the international standard distance, and it was the distance of every ITU World Championships since the inaugural one in 1989. And I, along with several others, worked really hard to get triathlon on the Olympic program. We were successful in doing that, and triathlon debuted as a full Olympic sport for both men and women in Sydney in the year 2000, again at that format. So all of that sort of early, if you will, pioneering activity got me inducted into both of those halls of fame. That and $5, Rob, gets you some decent coffee around the corner if you can actually get into the coffee shop. From there, it was a continuation of my career, because we had launched the entrepreneurial endeavor, CAT Sports. CAT owned the triathlon series. We packaged dozens of television shows, leveraged sponsorship, and we're really sort of one of the early episodic sporting events in participant sports to sort of spread across the country. And we ended up, over the course of the dozen years, putting close to 200,000 triathletes through courses in about 25 U.S. cities over that time span. So it was an awesome experience, and it taught me a lot about what it takes to be an entrepreneur, and what it takes to sell and package sponsorship for sporting events at the national and international level, and actually do the very important work to keep those sponsors satisfied, happy, and at the same time blend the experience with the participant base. From then, it was a little stint with the AVP, which is back then the Men's Pro Beach Volleyball Tour, and I worked there in the run-up to their debut in the Olympic Games, Atlanta 1996. Was then recruited to go to Universal Studios, spent half a dozen, almost 6 years there, and ran all of the corporate partnership for the theme park properties, and then took on a corporate role at Universal as well. From From there, tickets.com was the CRO and CMO, and in 2005, we successfully sold that company to Major League Baseball via their MLBAM arm. And from then on, it's been a really fun and interesting ride into the world of private equity, helping entrepreneurs get funded, taking early stage companies and getting into growth capital modes with a couple of full-time roles along the way. And as you and I are speaking today, I'm sort of taking all of that experience and sort of navigating through potholes, right? I mean, one of the great things about being a mentor in entrepreneurial environments is helping the young entrepreneurs not repeat mistakes that I've either come out of, or that I know via my experience just don't work. And that's really a fun part of being a mentor. Currently, I'm a senior advisor for the Orange County Soccer Club. And with all of what is going on in the marketplace today, of course, the USL, in which the OC Soccer Club is a Division I club, has suspended operations up through the end of May. Exact timing of that TBD, but that's true with all live sports across the country, as you well know.
So talk about, by the way, that's a heck of a career, mister. That's a heck of a career.
Well,
so, when I have someone on that has the body of work that you've had, and how you've pivoted now to helping others, advisory roles, mentoring roles, and then obviously on the investment side, talk about if you were in the position right now of starting up a business in the world that we live in and trying to get on of that. What advice would you have to those scrappy startups or they're here facing what they're facing in the world today? So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and obviously very relevant in today's environment. So the first thing I would say is, and you've heard it before, this too shall pass. If the entrepreneurial idea was good 6 months ago, 3 months ago, it's good today. Are there going to be some nuances? Are there going to be some changes? Are there going to be some adaptive requirements that will be necessary? Absolutely. But I would really encourage any young entrepreneur out there, if he or she feels like they have a really good product or a really good service or both, to stay very focused on that. And so taking a step back from that, the clarity around the quality of the product, the quality of the service is really important. That product or service had better serve a need in the marketplace, a need that the entrepreneur sees maybe is not being addressed right now, or is not being addressed as well as he or she believes it could or should be addressed. And that said, that's kind of why one would engage in an entrepreneurial activity. And secondly, what that product or service is super important. So a few questions that one needs to ask oneself, before going in hook, line, and sinker: is this product or service disruptive in the marketplace in any way? And there are tons of examples of that, Uber being probably one of the most noteworthy, as they disrupted what all of us had come to believe was an industry that was non-disruptible, right? It was the taxi service and it was the limo driver. Well, Uber changed forever public transportation, and there are a number of other examples I could use. So one of the questions that you can ask yourself is my idea disruptive, and is it unique, better, and different? And if so, in what ways is it unique, better, and different? It just can't be a Me Too product. It's awesome to build a better mousetrap, but in today's environment, where the barriers to entry are so low, particularly in digital and software spaces, you better have a pretty good idea of the moat, if you will, that would surround your product to make it unique, adoptable, because principally being the first to market is a huge advantage. And then you go through that normal that normal product cycle, right? You have early adopters, and then it goes right on up to when you all of a sudden hit this sort of magic place where it scales well. So those kinds of things need to be taken into account. How much protection or intellectual property, or is the product or service patentable? Those questions need to be asked and answered. And then most importantly, Robin, you and I sort of probably share this view. Once you've established that you do have a viable business model, you need to understand the size of the market you're looking to address. And within that macro size of the market, there should be an addressable piece of that market that you know extremely well. And that then is your almost all day, every day focal point. You make the best cake you can make, and you make it again and again and again and again. And pretty soon, that addressable market that you've identified and you are now communicating with via your go-to-market strategy will begin to eat the cake, and then they'll reorder the cake, and then they're going to tell their friends how awesome the cake is, and they're going to have their friends over their house to eat the cake, and you get the drift, right? It scales from there. And then the last point I would make is, build yourself a capable management team. At least identify who that capable management team might be. You may not have the capital yet to hire them, or they may be willing to sign on for a reduced compensation package that might include some equity or options longer term. And then very important to have a capable financial person on your wing. If that's not you, then you need somebody who's very skilled in dancing around an Excel spreadsheet, can talk you through the valid assumptions that need to be made, those assumptions that you're going to rely on, and then using those assumptions built out a 3 to 5 year financial plan. We all grew up, well, you and I did, when the 5-year plan was a requirement. Not true today. 3 years is fine, and the most important part of those 3 years is the first 18 months. Because typically, if a company can launch and still be alive 18 months downstream, the chances of continued success and viability are much, much higher.
Wow, that's well, you had me at cake. Once you said cake, you had me there. So I got another question for you. So talk about investors. Let's shift over there for a second. The one thing that I'm hearing and I'm seeing is a lot of these startups who are out there looking for funding, they're starting to panic a little bit. In your opinion, do you think that investors are going to wait till the market opens back up, or do you think they're still going to look for the deal flow and try to get those deals done now while the market's a little bit soft, knowing that it's going to come back?
Right. Well, I think both of those cases could be apropos here. One of the things in investors, particularly those who are deeply pocketed, as difficult as it might sound for an entrepreneur, those investors are still willing to write checks, but not at the valuations they might have 2 months ago. So I won't say they're bottom fishing, but they're looking for a bargain. And if you get the right investor, then it's not a stretch to sort of reduce your valuation a little bit to get you in the game and give yourself the best chance for success. If your investor pool or those you have been chasing have completely dried up or have basically told you, hey, we're out of the market for 6 months until we understand when this thing is going to calm down and when the capital markets are going to come back, then you have to keep looking. In the meantime, you take this time where not a lot is happening outside of digital and remote sessions like this to really fine tune your business model, your product offering. If you're on the product side and like shoes or apparel, you have to revisit the supply chains that you were hoping to set up. figure out if the elements or the companies in, from raw materials right on through to finished goods, if that supply chain is still in place, how healthy it is, because the ripple effect from stores closing or shuttering, all of the direct to consumer commerce that's taking place right now, all of those direct to consumer product categories have to have supply chains that are in good working order. So that's the actual sort of product side of it. Software or digital side of the businesses, that product development can continue on unabated because it's a remote anyway in all likelihood, and it's about coders and it's about product testing, and all of those things should continue full throttle while I won't say we wait for, but we begin to understand what the art of the possible is here over the next, call it, 15 to 75 days.
One of the things that I've been talking to a lot of the startups about too, especially if they feel like their business has stopped, right? The market hasn't opened for sports at all. The entire industry shut down right now for the most part. The one thing that I've been telling them to do is to look at the things that you always wanted to get to and to look at a vertical within your business, because at some point this may happen again. And it may happen within the cycle of your business within the next 3 to 5 years. So when the industry comes to a standstill again, if I'm an investor, I'm going to ask that question: is how are you going to overcome this next time this happens? So talk a little bit about that. And if you can, I don't know if this is relevant, but how did you overcome any challenges that you had in your business when the market crashed last time, 2008, 2010, right around that window?
Well, I'll address that one first. So I was working in private equity in back then. And it was true, and I think it's still true right now, Rob. It's just the dynamics of where and how investments get made change all the time. This is just the latest wrinkle. It's obviously a big wrinkle, but as I said at the top of the show, this too shall pass. So back in 2008, 2009, there was what we call a capital overhang in the market. There was an awful lot of private equity and investment capital that was ready, and the powder was dry, and they were ready to deploy. What happened in the fall of 2008 with the Lehman collapse was that all of these check writers, if you will, went on hold. Now, they did it for financial reasons. They did it because financial markets collapsed. They did it because the sort of 2008, 2009, what I'll call debacle, for lack of a better term, was actually, predicated on very risky and in some instances fraudulent financial practices across the home mortgage markets, across the insurance markets, and you know that story. Very different from what happened with the coronavirus, COVID-19. This was a scenario, we're living in a scenario that through no fault of our own, through no mismanagement, at least in the capital markets, financial markets, was any of that in place. This is like a tsunami. So what happens in a tsunami? It comes and you deal, and then it fades away. Does that mean a tsunami is never going to happen again? No, a tsunami will happen again. So using the tsunami analogy, all of a sudden, homes get built on stilts. They get built further back from the coastline. Retaining walls go in, breakwaters go in. All of those mitigating factors that weren't in place the first time, that now it becomes obvious that those factors would have helped. That's really the perspective one needs to take. I can't sit here and tell you specifically what those mitigating factors might be on a case-by-case basis for the entrepreneurs out there, but I can tell you that redundant backup systems in the software and digital space while as obvious as they are, you'd be amazed at how many companies, businesses, and individuals fail to back up their systems on a regular basis. That's, that's akin to just letting all the reserves go down to zero and thinking, oh well, the tsunami's never going to come again.
Well, we know history repeats itself, right? So it just keeps on going. How many of these we going to start living through? Thank God they're not anything worse than our grandparents and our parents lived through with World War II, Vietnam, and all those other crazy wars that were happening. So you just such a wealth of knowledge in the things that you've experienced in your life, and I could definitely see where you as an advisor, certainly a mentor, would mean a great deal to a startup. What advice do you give someone starting a business right now, and the importance of a mentor or advisor within those startup businesses? I mean, what have mentors meant to you in your life, in your career?
Oh, they've been almost, you almost can't describe how important they are. One, a trusted mentor that you are able to go to with any question at any time and know you're going to get a straight answer, even if that answer is, I don't know. Let's think about that. Let me think about who I know who might be able to help us answer that question. That kind of backstop is hugely important. Whether it's a mentor from afar, or a member of your advisory board, or your boss. And to be an entrepreneur doesn't always and only mean that you have to start your own company or launch your own product. I spent a number of years of my career in larger organizations where I approached my daily activity as an entrepreneur. The word back then was intrapreneur. So Universal Studios being a great example, it's an $8 billion company. I had 30 people that I was leading in my group, and I led them as if it was my own business. And we went through all of these kinds of things that I've spoken about over the past few minutes, and it allowed us to do things quicker, more efficiently, and at larger and more highly scalable levels than otherwise would have been the case if we were just going through the chain of command. The other thing I would say is there's some key areas in mentorship that entrepreneurs need to address sort of by function. One is leadership. I just spoke about that a little bit. Marketing. If the individual starting the company or product or service is not an expert in marketing, or feels like there's a lot more about marketing that could come into play here, then make sure that you build out a mentoring team that covers a few key areas: leadership, marketing / sales, finance. I spoke a bit about financial modeling early on, and legal. You want to make sure that these things are underpinned by the appropriate governance documents, compliance documents, and that as you move, for example, into a supply chain, or you move into contracted 1099 coders that might be overseas or whatever, that you understand and they understand exactly what's required, and you sort of bedrock that with paper.
Oh, I'm here. I dip in and out. I want everybody to focus in on what you have to say. So, Carl, thank you so much for your time. I mean, just sharing your story, sharing your advice with early stage or mid stage startups. Just wealth of knowledge and experience and everything you've done in your life and your career. How do people get a hold of you?
Oh, I'm easy. I'm Carl-A-Thomas at LinkedIn. Always a great way, because I'm always looking to do two things. One, in the appropriate, relevant way, expand my LinkedIn network, and at the same time be a resource for folks who might have questions. And you have that information, Rob. Feel free to throw that up on the screen, or if this is a recorded piece, then happy to do whatever. I would leave you with one further thought, and that is, any and every entrepreneur that's worth her or his salt has to come to the table every day with a great attitude, with the drive and energy to succeed, with a character of integrity, because there are going to be very difficult decisions that need to be made, and you as the entrepreneur are going to need to make them, and the folks around you and the folks that are helping you need to recognize that you're a woman or a man of character, period. And then lastly, you've got talent. You've got talent, not the TV show. Every one of us actually has talent. And if we remember those 5 things every day and come to the table with a relentless focus around our vision, our mission, and the strategy we've decided upon to deploy and launch the company/product, the likelihood of your success just doing that, regardless of capital needs, regardless of coronavirus, regardless of the next Lehman meltdown, your chances for success go way, way up.
Well, it's no secret why, and no surprise why you've been so successful. So thanks for spending time with us. That's Carl Thomas over there. I'm Rob Thompson. This is Game Plan U today. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Carl, thanks for joining. I really appreciate your time.
So much my pleasure, Rob. Thank you.